Go.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another NFL preview. Calling this Chapter 3 because it was kind of confusing last time to have it a Part 2 and also have a Part 1 and 2 of Part 2. So we're trying to help this out as we go. It's a lot of stuff that we're trying to break through every single week, but we are doing it. I'm Chris Spags, joined by my good friend, the Chubster himself, Mr. Josh Engelman. Josh, you ready to talk some running backs today?
I've never been more ready for something in my entire life.
That's the kind of enthusiasm we're hoping for. If you're not a premium member of Awesemo.com, you should be. Keep an eye out. We're going to have some NFL early bird specials coming up soon. So keep watch there. Obviously, we'll alert you on the live streams and all of that. And also, as always, there's a companion article, which will be linked down in the YouTube description. You can see more stats, more data, more of the stuff that I'm talking about and Josh is talking about as well. But a lot of research-heavy stuff, which should be helpful for you as we're building the research part of the season before we kind of dig deeper in prices and all the other important things you need to know for DFS. So go check that out as soon as you're done with this video. But without further ado, let's just get into this. This time, we're going to try to be fast and efficient, like some sort of German ingenuity thing. So we're going to go right up top. Arizona Cardinals. Expected starters David Johnson, returning from a wrist injury last year, which obviously wouldn't impact him this year. It's not like a leg injury. Wrists heal fine and don't affect you on the field. Johnson has plus 900 odds, according to Vegas, to lead the league in rushing. These numbers are from Bovada, by the way, just in case you want to cross-reference it. David Johnson has said his 2018 goal is to rack up 1,000 yards receiving and rushing, which was also his goal last year before he got hurt. A performance like that would make him unequivocally a top fantasy option. Without Johnson last year, Arizona was towards the bottom of the league, finishing 27th in the league in rushing touchdown rate and 31st in rushing yards per attempt, which was down from 9th ranked the year before and 13th ranked in yards per attempt for Johnson's breakout year. They have a new coordinator in Mike McCoy, who sucked pretty bad in Denver, as we talked about in most of these parts last year. Not super inspiring there. Vegas believing in Johnson makes me want to believe in Johnson. I think there's some things to worry about there with the QB play. But for me, Johnson is going to be able to overcome that. Even if they get down a lot because the QBs suck, he's still going to get passes in the flat. He's still going to get touches. I like Johnson a lot still. How do you feel about him, Josh?
I'm a big fan of David Johnson. He was so good 2 years ago. And if you want to know about the impact of what him not being on the field was for Arizona last year, dead last in rushing offense from Football Outsiders, a site that, while I like their information, I don't like the site. We won't get into that here. But yeah, dead last rushing offense last year without David Johnson. I mean, that's all you need to know. He was the 10th best running back in 2016 in their rushing stat, and I expect him to make. He has the ability to have a big outcome on their offense. I just don't think the team's very good, so you might not see the wide array of what he can do this year just because the team is kind of sketchy, especially if Bradford goes down early, which, you know, he probably will. So while I love David Johnson, he's a clear top option from a fantasy perspective. I'm tempering my expectations a little bit because I'm not a big fan of Arizona.
Yeah, one thing to note, Johnson did play most of one game last year. In that one game, he had 9 targets, which is an insane amount for a running back, more than some guys had in the entire year. In fact, Chris Carson, who played a lot for Seattle, or a fair amount rather for Seattle last year, had much less. So, and that was in multiple games. So I don't know. I think Johnson's a pretty good play. I think they're going to use him well. I don't think, I worry a little bit about the offense, but Johnson's a great player. And like Josh pointed out, they were just so bad without him where they have nowhere to go but up. And Johnson's too talented to be held down, I think, even by a terrible offense. Let's go on to the Atlanta Falcons. Their expected starter is Devonta Freeman, who is currently plus 2,800 to lead the league in rushing. The other relevant running back they have in the stable, Mr. Tevin Coleman, who sounds like an R&B star, but is not. He is, in fact, a running back of pretty decent size and weight.
How many people are even going to get that?
Probably not enough. It's always the issue with these jokes. If Freeman and Coleman were fused into one human being, this is the only time I'll make this analogy, but I thought it was interesting. They would be the third best running back in terms of touches inside the red zone, with 57 carries inside the 20-yard line between them. Despite the size difference and some of the perception issues with Tevin Coleman versus Freeman. Freeman actually gets used more as the Falcons get closer to the goal line. He was 10th best in the league, getting 64% of his team's rushes inside the 5. It seems unlikely to me that the Falcons are much worse than they were last year. They were 12th ranked with 4.2 yards per rush. So Freeman's ability to pile up yards and in the rushing game and the receiving game make him a really great option. One thing to note, Julio Jones holding out, not great. Obviously, Julio Jones being gone would mean more men in the box, mean more pressure on Freeman and Coleman. That would worry me a little bit, but the assumption is he'll get into camp. They'll figure something out. I like Freeman, and I think he's undervalued in the marketplace.
I'm a big fan too, but I'm also a big fan of the Falcons, if you've listened to these previous shows. While Chris spits his water all over himself. I don't think I said anything particularly funny for a spit take on this one, but, you know, that's fine.
Drinking water is hard. It's a big cup.
That does look like an excessively... Are you drinking the boot from Beer Fest right now?
It actually is a mug that I stole from a beer place.
Thieves. Atlanta, middle of the pack in rushing offense last year, but Freeman was good. 11th. Nope, that's the wrong column. 14th in defensive yards above replacement from said Football Outsiders. Top 20 running back. I like him a lot. If he stays on the field, he's a really nice option. I don't have like too much interesting to say about Coleman, but I like that 1-2 punch. They should have a lot of room to run with, you know, Julio Jones and Ridley and Sanu spread out, Austin Hooper as well. For me, it's hard to not like the Falcons running game coming into this year. They'll do enough to like be like, they're never going to be like the top running team in the league. To me, that's just not their style. But they're very good to keep the balance for what they're going to do from a passing standpoint.
Yeah, and Freeman too, in terms of total touches, so including his receptions and his rushes, he was getting 17 touches per game, which is pretty high up there, you know, especially for a guy like him who's so explosive, so able to get into space, and also a bit of a TD hound. He put up touchdowns 3.5% of the time that he touched the ball, which would put him in the higher echelon of running backs and actually put him closer to guys who aren't getting as many carries. So again, you're getting a ton of touches with him, getting a pretty effective rate of touches. All that stuff for me works out. Coleman obviously would be a better play if Freeman got hurt, but I think Freeman's still the guy. Coleman's sort of I think a clear-cut number 2, not even a 1B. So I like Freeman, and I think Coleman would only be interesting if Freeman is out for an extended period of time.
I would agree
Let's go on to Baltimore. Baltimore, we have Mr. Alex Collins, who is the expected starter. He's currently plus 4,000 to lead the league in rushing. The other relevant RB is Mr. Javorius Buck Allen from USC, a great smash mouth player who actually is becoming more of a sort of pass catcher in the NFL. With a big drop off rather between them. Collins was not great at catching balls, pulling down to 64% of his targets last year. Allen picked up 77%. So it's interesting to me that Alex Collins is getting a lot of sort of hype about being a feature back this year, including from the Ravens organization themselves. I think there's still going to be a role for Allen and one that cuts into the value of Alex Collins. That said, Collins was much better overall in terms of getting yardage. He picked up 4.9 yards per touch compared to Buck Allen's 4.2. The red zone split should, in theory, get better for Collins as well. Allen saw 38% of the carries inside of the 5-yard line as opposed to Collins, who got just under 19. So to me, I think there's a lot of room for growth with Collins. I don't know that it fully backs into the hype. I don't have his ADP in front of me right now, his average draft position. But I do think that Collins is a good play, just maybe a bit of an overhyped one.
I'm going to disagree. I like him a lot. Last year, he was 6th in DER, 3rd in DVOA for running backs that got 100 carries. DVOA would be a per play metric. He was really, really good last year. Ravens 7th ranked rushing offense in 2017. I'm a fan. I wish I were a bigger fan of the rest of their offense. I mean, they're turning over their entire wide receiving core, so that's scary. I don't know enough about how good of a blocker Crabtree, Snead, or Brown will be, but I mean, if you're going to use last year as a barometer, I would expect big things from Collins.
Yeah, I mean, Collins is obviously in line to get some more touches, one would think. He started 12 games last year, did get over 1,000 yards from scrimmage between his receptions and his rushing. So there is room to grow still, and you know the numbers do well on a per play basis. I think it's just a matter of how much do you believe in the Ravens offense and how much do you believe that Collins will actually get that feature back opportunity. I think if you're on board with that, then you're right. Yeah, I like the DVOA stat. I do. That's actually one of my favorite ones, but I didn't use it a ton for this, so glad you're breaking it out.
He's coming off the board as roughly the 20th running back, somewhere in the neighborhood of 40 overall, so fourth round-ish, and that makes sense to me.
Yeah, I like that. That seems like that has some upside too, so I'm with you on that.
Yeah, he's not a volume guy.
The Buffalo Bills expected starter is LaShawn McCoy, who currently has plus 6,000 odds to lead the league in rushing. Obviously, a bit hurt by some of the allegations around him and kidnappings and who knows what else. Other relevant running back in the stable is Chris Ivory. I think so. Something that jumped out to me, McCoy was really more of a volume runner than he was a super effective runner. And I think actually if McCoy does miss time, and again, that's super speculative, there's nothing being reported about that, Ivory should be able to fill in at a pretty comparable rate. Let's see. Ivory pulled down 75% of his targets last year compared to 76.6 for I wrote the awkwardly nicknamed Shady. But I think overall, I looking at it from that perspective, I do think Ivory would have a little more interest to me than I would have realized. McCoy is still a better rusher, 4.6 yards per touch, 2.3% TD rate compared to 4.2 per and 1.5% for Ivory. So to me, I think McCoy is an okay play. Obviously we need to see how his legal situation shakes out. So if your draft is early, sucks for you. But if he is out for any time, I'm in on Ivory even more so. I think the volume is going to be there obviously for either guy. And if Ivory can stay healthy, I think he can do a pretty reasonable recreation of what McCoy does.
McCoy averaging somewhere in the neighborhood of the 16th running back coming off the board. Bills rushing offense 19th in DVOA last year. Here's what's really interesting. There were 47 guys that had a minimum of 100 carries last year. McCoy ranked 41st in defensive yards above replacement, 38th in DVOA. Only first guy behind him in defensive yards above replacement, Chris Ivory. This might not be the best 1-2 punch that you could have in the backfield. Now, I'm underselling McCoy's ability to catch passes out of the backfield, which is obviously a big skill of his. But, man, I think the Bills suck. And based on what I'm reading and based on what I'm looking at, I mean, they weren't particularly great last year. McCoy, not the best. He just needs to be on the field. So, if he's there, he's dynamic, but I'm not sure he's necessarily good. And I know that's probably a relatively controversial take.
No, so that's what jumped out to me too on paper was that I thought his numbers were going to be better. He's really just a volume player, and I think there are a couple guys who we'll discuss today who are more volume players than they are super elite explosive running backs, even though they have the perception of that. And I think McCoy is one of those guys. Only just 4.6 yards from scrimmage between all of his touches, which is not bad, but he's really just a volume guy. He's the fifth most touched. He's got the fifth most touches in the league at running back, behind just Bell, Elliott, Fournette, and Gurley. So I think to me that's the value is you're looking for volume, and that's why Ivory can be a reasonable fill-in too. You just need that volume. So
and
McCoy,
how much volume are the Bills really going to have this year? You got to be banking on AJ McCarron being super good for the Bills to be out in front and running the ball a lot.
But they still ran the ball last year, even though they weren't good at passing it, and they were
they just the playoffs. They were obviously winning games. So if you're winning, you're naturally going to be running clock down more.
I think it's just more of a risk-averse offense where they would prefer to run the ball, even if they're not, necessarily doing a ton on each drive, because the defense can keep them in games, and they're good at game planning defensively. So I think that's sort of the approach where I think there'll still be volume there, even if they are trailing, or even if they're not quite as good as they were last year. At least that's my view on it.
I'd be risk-averse too if I had Tyrod Taylor or AJ McCarron at quarterback.
Well, no more Tyrod. Tyrod is now a proud Brown man. Carolina Panthers, expected starter. Also the Browns, by the way, just real fast. Jarvis Landry is saying that they can win the Super Bowl and they might put up 40 a game. Really outrageous quotes by Jarvis Landry today for the Browns, but we'll talk about him more next week, I guess.
I mean, if you're going to go for it, I guess.
Carolina Panthers, expected starters Christian McCaffrey, who has no odds on the board to win the league in rushing. Other relevant running backs were C.J. Anderson and Cameron Artis-Payne. New offensive coordinator Nerve Turner is taking the reins. He'll obviously have some weapons to work with there. Christian McCaffrey is still there. Jonathan Stewart is gone, but C.J. Anderson is taking his place. The opportunity is the biggest for McCaffrey. Just yesterday, Coach Ron Rivera said that ideally he would get McCaffrey 25 to 30 touches a game. To me, I think that's a pretty aggressive mark. I actually, in the article, wrote that if he could get just 250 touches this year, so that's a little bit closer to, what is that, like 18 touches a game? I don't know. That math is hard. If he gets to 250 touches, his current touchdown rate would imply that he could get to 9 scores this year, which is a pretty solid opportunity given his pass catching ability and the fact that he just needs to run more this year. He only picked up 27.2 yards per game rushing last year, and without Stewart and CJ Anderson's going to take some of that touch and that look, but I think that McCaffrey is going to get more this year. One thing to note was that Anderson was pretty effective last year, even though he got a bad rap. 4.5 yards per touch, despite the Broncos being much worse than that. Artis Payne also picked up 5.1 yards per touch, which is pretty good in a limited sample size. So there are guys there, but McCaffrey is the one to watch, and I think a little undervalued, at least from a rushing perspective, with no odds at all for Vegas.
This one's so tough for me because I think that he's really good, but he was bad last year. Like, really, really bad. And it's more of an opportunity thing. Like, he was 5th in receiving as a running back in terms of overall production. But on a play-by-play basis, he was just 21st among 62 guys that caught 25 balls. So, like, he wasn't efficient. It was just a volume game for him last year. Now, if he can transition that volume into becoming better as a second-year player, that's a great start. I mean, they obviously had no problem getting him the ball in different ways. I hope he takes a big leap. The numbers don't necessarily agree with that. But, man, I'm on Team McCaffrey. I can't get off that. I don't know. It's weird for me. See what his average draft position is. Coming off the board as the 12th running back right now. 19th overall. So somewhere right around the wraparound of the second round if you're playing a 10-team league. I like it there.
It's tough to me because like he was 38th in the league in terms of touches per game, and he still put up those amazing numbers. I mean, 650 receiving yards despite only getting about 12.3 touches rather. Like that's pretty crazy to me. And then the touchdown rate is really strong. And again, I just think he has to get better as a rusher because they need him to do something more there this year. So like he might not have been the most efficient, but he's going to get a chance at it. And I think the ADP seems a little high, but I'm all right with it because I think he'll get the opportunity. He'll at least get a shot to do more, and that's more than you can say for a lot of the guys.
I think he's going to be a much better fantasy option than real life option.
That I could see, especially in PPR leagues, any sort of PPR.
Oh, yeah, in a PPR league. I mean, he's a stud, kind of.
Yeah. Chicago Bears, expected starters Jordan Howard, plus 2,500 odds to lead the league in rushing. The other relevant RB in their stable, Tariq Cohen, who is a more of an offensive weapon than a pure running back, but he's shown the ability to do both. As we talked about in the previous editions, there's a new coach in Matt Nagy, new coordinator in the former Oregon coach, Mark Helfrich. They're expected to bring a West Coast / run pass option to Chicago. And there's been a lot of buzz about Jordan Howard becoming more of a true feature back and playing on third down passing situations. Despite his reputation as a straight line runner, Howard caught 72% of the passes thrown his way in 2017 and picked up 5.4 yards per reception. So that's pretty solid. Shows some upside if he does get more balls thrown his way. He also scored touchdowns at a rate of about 3%. So he every time per touch rather. So he was scoring a fair amount of the time he was getting the ball. And he also got 63% of the red zone touches. So there's a lot of room there. It sort of depends on how you view Chicago. It also depends a little bit on how you view Tariq Cohen. Tariq Cohen got 5.2 yards per touch himself, but he doesn't have the build to take a ton of carries away from Howard. Howard is more of a feature back kind of style in terms of his size and just his sort of approach. So I think him being the 10th best running back in terms of Vegas's odds to win the rushing title, that seems good to me. And I like Howard a lot, actually. I think he's pretty interesting, and I think he's going to get the work, and that's really what you're looking for more than anything.
See, Howard's draft position right now, 14th, coming off 23rd, generally speaking.
So lower than McCaffrey. That's surprising. That shouldn't be.
Well, I mean, McCaffrey is just barely ahead of him, so you can make a case for either. He was roughly top 10 in DR and DVOA last year from a running perspective, but this one's bad. 62 running backs caught 25 balls last year on a per play basis. Cohen 58th, Howard 61st. So shout out to Mitch Trubisky for being terrible. Not a great receiving season for either of those guys, I'm not buying Howard or Cohen at all. I hate the Bears. Oh my God.
I think this is when it's going to bite you because I think the Bears are shaping up pretty interesting. And I think just the workload for Howard in particular. I mean, he was already 10th in the league in touches last year, touches per game rather, picked up about the same amount as Carlos Hyde, who was ahead of him, both of them with 18.7 touches per game. If he gets to 22, that would put him right in the category with Melvin Gordon, Dalvin Cook, a lot of guys who are going much higher in drafts. And I think that he can make the most of that just on a volume basis. I mean, we just talked about McCoy. You just need that volume. And if you can get that volume, I think there's no reason to think that he wouldn't be able to do more with it.
I just worry that they're bad and they both just like hemorrhage each other's upside.
Also, not an unreasonable approach. I know. I'm buying Howard. I would go pro Howard. Actually, let's do this set for every guy. Let's say like we're buying or selling him. I'm buying Howard.
Okay, I'm selling Howard.
All right, fuck you. that's for you, Jordan. Team Jordan, ride or die.
I love that you tell me to fuck off after you pitch the game and you know what my answer is going to be. Just got done saying I was selling him. You're like, yeah, we should do that. I'm buying. You're selling? Oh, fuck off. Like it was news. Like it was some late breaking shit.
You're correct. You are correct. That was unfair. And that's what we're known for on these videos that we do. Cincinnati Bengals. Expected starters Joe Mixon currently has plus 5,000 odds to lead the league in rushing. Other relevant running back is Giovanni Bernard. The Bengals offense was just dreadful last year from a rushing standpoint. Third worst in the league with 3.6 yards per attempt. They had two offensive coordinators between the fired Ken Zampese and the retained Bill Lazor. Joe Mixon was right in line with team performance, putting up just about 3.5 yards per attempt, while Bernard did rush for 4.4. Both players were pretty effective or at least more effective out of the passing game. Mixon caught 30 balls for 9.6 yards per. And Bernard pulled down 43 for 9 yards per. So a little surprising that Mixon gets no love as a pass receiver, but he was actually better than Bernard, who gets a ton of love. Interesting to me to note. And Mixon also caught 88% of the balls thrown his way, as opposed to 71% for Bernard. So I think, to me, one thing that jumped out here, Cincinnati depends what we believe. We've talked a little bit about maybe there's some regression to better days for Cincinnati that's due. Mixon, to me, is a guy who may be better at holding off Bernard than it would seem, just because he can do these things better than Bernard, but Bernard has more of a reputation for being better, and I think that's an opportunity to strike if you think Mixon can get that feature back role.
I'm not really expecting too many things out of either of these guys. There's obviously upside in Mixon. At this point, we kind of know what Gio Bernard is. Change of pace, catch some balls out of the backfield, whatever. It'll be interesting. Like, I think John Ross has a lot to do with the success of their running game this year. If he's stretching the field vertically, then they might have a little bit more success running the ball. But for right now, where Mixon's going, which is one spot behind Jordan Howard, I'm fine with him there. I guess I would say that I'm holding on Mixon. I'm just kind of indifferent.
Yeah, I think it depends on where you can get him. If it's an auction league where you're getting that, what his price is, I think in DFS, I think that's the stuff that I would look at. But he did get 15 touches per game last year as a rookie. Played 14 games, only started 7. So, I mean, you got to assume those numbers are going to go up this year. Actually, no, my bad. But no, that's right. Yeah, so I think those numbers can only go up for him this year. I like Mixon in terms of being a sort of underappreciated play, and people are going to think Cincinnati sucks. And it seems hard for me to believe that they would suck as bad as they did last year. So that would be, I'm going to buy Joe Mixon. Just not if I were a girl in a bar.
Brutal.
So, hey, you can't live that down for at least a couple of years.
He socked her right in the kisser, huh?
Right in the kisser.
Bad. Not good at all.
Buying or selling?
I'm holding.
Oh, we have a new option. Okay.
I'm like I said, I'm generally indifferent.
Okay, that's fair. On to their Ohio friends, the Cleveland Browns. Expected starter is Carlos Hyde. Currently has no odds to lead the league in rushing. The other relevant running backs, Mr. Nick Chubb and Duke Johnson. All signs from Vegas thus far this offseason are pointing to the Browns moving closer to respectability. Unfortunately, that does not apply to Carlos Hyde. He actually was pretty mediocre last year. He did play all 16 games, I think, for the first time in his career. And he did get a ton of touches. He picked up 18.7 touches per game, so almost 19. Started all 16 games. He was actually less effective than Matt Breida, who was on the same team, obviously having the same offensive line. So, if you're not doing as well as Matt Breida, you're clearly a volume play. And to me, it's more of a situation where what's the volume going to be in Cleveland for him? I don't know that he's going to hold off Nick Chubb and Duke Johnson overall. I think you need to have both those guys in the mix. So I'm not crazy about Carlos Hyde unless you're getting him for very cheap and there's a chance of him seizing the role in the preseason.
Yeah, he's been like the 30th running back to come off the board, coming off from like 80th-ish. So he was bad last year, in my opinion. I'm not a huge Carlos Hyde fan. I'm definitely selling Hyde. I see no reason they don't give Chubb more and more carries throughout the year as their season likely goes down the dumper. So I'm buying Nick Chubb, maybe not necessarily as like some savior of the running game, but I like him for the future. I'm definitely selling Carlos Hyde. Not a guy that I would want to be picking up. I don't need a running back off the worst team in football.
Yeah, I'm also going to sell Carlos Hyde. I think it's a matter of the volume, and I don't see the volume being there quite as much as it was for him in San Francisco last year. So I'm with you. Hey, we agree. 2 sells. Poor Carlos. Dallas Cowboys. Expected starter is Ezekiel Elliott, who leads the odds with plus 285 odds to lead the league in rushing. That would give him roughly a 26% chance to win the rushing title this year. A massive hint to how Vegas thinks that he'll return from his 2017 campaign that was marred by the ongoing suspension issues that were pretty bullshitty, if we're being honest. Despite that, Elliott did rack up 4.1 yards per carry last year and was effective when given chances in the passing game. He picked up 10.3 yards per catch, despite only getting the ball through the air a couple times a game. The volume's going to be there for Ezekiel Elliott. That's sort of the main thing to look at. Last year, he was second in the league just behind Le'Veon Bell with 26.8 touches per game. So to me, that's what you're banking on. You're banking on him being a little better. You're betting on him being available for all 16 games instead of 10 like he was last year. So I am very much buying Ezekiel Elliott, and doesn't even matter where you're drafting him. Buying him.
Yeah, I mean, I'm buying. I have a little bit of apprehension. I'm just scared of Dak's health because it can get really bleak for Zeke if it's not Dak under center. He was a top 10 dude in volume, top 10 dude in a per play efficiency. Not the best pass catcher in the world, but that's not really what you're looking for from a guy like Elliott, who's going to get basically anything he wants every single week. It's not like they're going to limit his ability on the field. So definitely buying Elliott. He's the 3rd running back off the board right now behind Gurley and Bell. And, I'm totally in there. I'm just a little nervous that Dallas is just a wasteland behind Dak.
I as a Cowboys fan, I will say that my unbiased opinion is they're going to be great this year and fantastic in every possible way.
Yeah, there's no bias in that statement whatsoever.
Not even a little. Buying old Zeke, buying old Allen Hurns. We'll talk more about that next week.
Yeah. Can I just sell Hurns now? We could skip it.
No, you're gonna be convinced. I don't even know if the data is gonna be that convinces you, but you're gonna be convinced about Allen Hurns next week.
I've already sold him.
You can bank on it.
I already put the sell in. Done.
They didn't execute the order yet. Don't worry. Denver Broncos expected starters Devontae Booker, who has no odds to lead the league in rushing, breathing right down his neck. Rookie Royce Freeman. They are bringing him on board. The new offensive coordinator, technically new. He filled in when Mike McCoy got fired last year, but his first full-time year in the role. Bill Musgrave, who was a pretty good rushing offensive coordinator in his last offensive coordinator stint in Oakland. Devontae Booker was serviceable in 2017. He had 3.8 yards per rush. That was roughly in line with the Broncos' 4.1 yards per rush team performance. Booker was better in the pass game, a place where he caught 79% of his targets for 5.3 yards per catch. So that's solid. Booker, the slag on him is that he doesn't have the size to be a feature back. And that is not an issue with Royce Freeman. Royce Freeman, again, the thing we've talked about a few times, his spark comparison, which is a good thing to look at for rookies because it sort of measures the athletic abilities relative to other previous players. Freeman's comparison is Steven Jackson, and that is a real bell cow back kind of comparison, a guy who can catch the ball, who can take hits. That's what the hope Freeman is. I want to watch this one in training camp more. I want to make sure Freeman's getting the touches that he should be getting. But to me, Freeman is a guy who can turn this offense around or at least find enough value. So I would be more inclined to go Freeman than Booker. And I would be very inclined to go Freeman if he takes a starting job in training camp, or in preseason, rather.
Raise your hand if you thought about the NBA's Steven Jackson when you said that. Just me. Just me.
Steven Jackson, a forgotten great of the NFL already, even though he's only been retired like 2 years.
Yeah, so Royce Freeman coming off the board 28th, Devontae Booker 45th. I don't think anybody's really buying the Denver rushing game coming into this year, although if there's upside there if Case Keenum turns out to be what he was last year moving forward. I think that makes Freeman and Booker significantly more appealing. I'm not a buyer in Keenum, so I'm pretty naturally a seller of Freeman or Booker.
Okay, I'm buying Freeman. I just think he's got the size. I'm selling Booker. I just don't think he's going to get the role that he needs to be valuable. But I think Freeman's going to get the touches, and I think he's got the pedigree to make it work. So I'm in on Royce. Royce the 5'9", who is not 5'9". Royce the 6'1".
Big fan of Royce the 5'9", if we're just going to talk about him a little bit here.
I was too, especially his collaborations with Eminem. Really a big fan of those.
Love the Slaughterhouse stuff.
Bad Meets Evil. Very big fan of that. The Detroit Lions.
That most recent Bad Meets Evil album was really good. Sorry, had to get that out there. I listened to it a lot. Anyway.
No, we only get so many chances to talk Royce to 5'9". So.
Right, how often does that come up?
Detroit Lions. Expected starters Theo Riddick, who has no odds to lead the league in rushing. The other relevant running backs in the stable, Amir Abdullah, LeGarrette Blount, and rookie Kerryon Johnson. Detroit was dead last running the ball last year with just 3.4 yards per rush. It's unclear to me how they're going to get much better this year. LeGarrette Blount did average 4.4 yards per carry for the Eagles last year, but the Eagles overall averaged 4.4 yards per attempt, and Jay Ajayi and Corey Clement were just about as effective as LeGarrette Blount. So it really wasn't anything special he was doing. That could just be a symptom of the line play. Theo Riddick has more value as a pass catcher. He picked up 3 catches and 20 yards per game, along with a 75% catch rate. To me, overall, too many mouths to feed here. I don't think Blunt's going to be a feature back. I don't even think Abdullah is going to make it out of the preseason with them. Kerryon Johnson doesn't grade out that well from a spark level. He gets compared to Kenneth Dixon, who DFS players may remember a couple years ago as being serviceable from a volume perspective, but nothing special. I'm maybe speculatively into Kerryon Johnson if he does get a look, but Riddick maybe as a DFS play from a salary perspective, but I don't want to roster any of these guys. I'm selling them.
Kerryon Johnson, 34th running back off the board. I guess I'm buying that at that spot. If it goes well, that's a decent value. So I'm buying him at that particular spot. Like, I'd be happy to take him a couple spots earlier than that just because of how late that is. I don't need much Theo Riddick. LeGarrette Blount's the guy you stream if you're trying to, like, bang out some vulture touchdowns or something. But as a whole, I'm not too enthused. Like you said, too many mouths to feed for the Lions. But I think that by taking Kerryon Johnson where he's going, it's a worthwhile lottery ticket.
Yeah, I could see that. At that level, I think it's worth a shot. But overall, though, like if we're just banking solely upon his chances of success, I'm not crazy about him overall.
Same.
Green Bay Packers. Expected starter is Ty Montgomery, who has no odds to lead the league in rushing. The other relevant running backs in the stable are Aaron Jones, who was suspended, I believe, the first 2 games of the year, and Jamal Williams. The thing we've talked about a few times so far in these previous chapters of the preview, the former Packers OC Joe Philbin is back in Green Bay, a spot where that augurs well for the passing attack, given that they were top ranked the last time he was there. But they were also 20th ranked the last time that he was their offensive coordinator in rushing the ball. They were pretty good on the ground last year, though, sort of a symptom of starting Brett Hundley and losing Aaron Rodgers. But the big reason they were successful was Aaron Jones, who had 5.5 yards per attempt, way more than Ty Montgomery and Jamal Williams, who averaged 3.8 and 3.6 yards per attempt, respectively. Montgomery's going to have some use in the passing game, a spot where he picked up about 3 catches per game last year in the half season that he was healthy. But Jones, to me, is the dude. I don't see how he doesn't win the job. Obviously, he's going to be out the first 2 weeks, so if you want to stream Montgomery or Williams, I don't see any issue with that. But Aaron Jones is way better than these guys by everything I looked at. I would much rather have Aaron Jones. I would buy Aaron Jones. I'd probably sell the other guys.
Aaron Jones coming off the board as the 42nd running back.
That's crazy.
Somewhere in the 105 range overall.
Wow.
I'm selling all of the Packers running backs. They're Packers running backs. Look, the only thing we're worried about here are Aaron Rodgers and the wide receivers. Packers running game for, I don't know, ever has been an afterthought. They were efficient last year, but not great from like a fantasy perspective. So I'm good. I don't need any of these guys.
All right, I want to see more of Aaron Jones getting the ball in the red zone, but to me, I'm strongly buying Aaron Jones. I still think there's going to be value in that offense for running backs. The former Joe Philman numbers the last time he was there worry me a little bit, but I think Jones is good enough. And also, he was on Cousin Sal's gambling podcast, seemed very confident.
There you go.
So that's what you're looking for. A guy sounding confident in a 1-second stint on a podcast. The Houston Texans expected starters Lamar Miller, who has plus 10,000 odds to lead the league in rushing. The other relevant running back in the stable, Deonta Foreman, got a little bit of love last year. Miller was, to me, the very definition of mediocre in 2017. He notched 3.7 yards per rush, despite the team averaging 4.1 yards per rush, which was a bit aided by Deshaun Watson's ability to run out of the pocket. To his credit, Miller did catch 80% of the balls thrown his way to get a respectable 12-15 yards from scrimmage. To me, what I want to see is Deonta Foreman getting a little more love. He was better in a limited sample size, picking up 4.2 yards per attempt and 4.9 yards per touch overall. I would like to see the young guy getting love. I think Miller's best days are behind him. He's not in Miami anymore, breaking those 80-yard runs. I'm selling Miller. I'm probably not buying Foreman yet, but I'm holding Foreman. I want to see more and get a better read on it, and I think he's got a shot.
Lamar Miller coming off the board 26th. 55 overall. So, mid fifth round ish. Not the best, like, you know what you're getting from him from a running perspective. What I thought was interesting, fourth highest DR for receiving, so really good pass catcher and super efficient. Second, actually, on a per play basis. If Deshaun Watson's out there, like, I like him as a safety valve a little bit. So I'm going to buy Lamar Miller in a weird way. I don't like myself for saying that because it's Lamar Miller and it's super unappealing. But I'm going to buy Lamar Miller. I think he's a good cog in that offense.
I see what you're saying with the receiving stuff. He averaged 9.1 yards per reception and caught about a little over 2 balls per game. So, yeah, I could see that part of it. And he still did get 17 touches a game, which would put him at 13th in the league. So just from an ADP standpoint, I think there is upside to him in that respect. I just don't think he's that great of a player, and I would like to see a younger player get a shot to do the same things because I think it's a matter of opportunity. And to me, Foreman grades out better. So I would be curious to see that. So whatever. Fuck you, Lamar Miller.
Damn.
No, I don't really have that strong opinion on Lamar Miller, but I would like to see Foreman get more love. I like to see the guys who are doing better and younger than playing a guy who's just like overpaid and has been around for a while.
That's right. I wish I was doing this with Jake instead of you. I want the younger guys that are over to get a shot.
I am taking up a lot of salary cap and just doing nothing with it. The Indianapolis Colts expected starters Marlon Mack, who surprisingly to me has no odds to lead the league in rushing. Other relevant RBs are guys you definitely don't know, Josh. Naheem Hines and Jordan Wilkins, both rookies.
Oh, Naheem? My man, Naheem. I love your catch-up, dude.
He's obviously, yes, he's spelled differently than that, but yes, he is actually related to Cheryl Hines of Curb Your Enthusiasm. So that is the
Not
Naheem's
a fan.
big reference. Oh, it's sad. That's actually very sad to me, but well, maybe a live stream topic in the future.
Sure.
The big move here is Frank Gore being gone. Marlon Mack has gotten a fair amount of hype. He's been pretty serviceable as a rusher. He picked up 3.8 yards per carry, which was above the team's 3.7 yards per carry average last year. He excelled as a pass catcher, picking up almost 11 yards per reception, and that's despite a shoulder injury, which apparently hampered him all of 2017, according to reports. So he shares that in common with his new quarterback, Andrew Luck. Mack is super young, too. I think he's 22 years old. Yeah, he's 22 years old. And that, to me, is also interesting. I mean, going with a little NBA logic, guys who are that young tend to have a little more upside. And I think Marlon Mack getting a full role here, getting a great quarterback behind the pocket in theory, who's going to hit him in the flat more, going to try to check down and not screw up as much with downfield passes, I think, this year. I don't know. I like Marlon Mack a lot. Naheem Hines, I guess, just to close it out, he grades out similarly to C.J. Spiller, according to his Spark profile, whereas Wilkins is more of a bruising running back in the style of Mike Gillislee, according to his Spark profile. But Mack, to me, is the guy to look at. I like Marlon Mack a lot. I am strongly buying Marlon Mack.
I mean, if you're buying Marlon Mack, you're basically saying, I think Andrew Luck's going to be good this year.
Yes, and I do.
Yeah. Like Max coming off the board 30th. I don't have a problem with a flyer in the 8th round or 7th round for someone like that. But you're betting on the health of Andrew Luck, because if Mac's not there, or if Luck's not there, not going to be a lot of running the ball with Jacoby Brissett. And I like Brissett, but like obviously the Colts sucked last year. I based on where he's going, I'm buying Marlon Mack, but I'm not super enthused about it. I prefer return of the Mac than Marlon Mack in my ranking of Macs.
How about Marlon Wayans versus Marlon Mack?
I'm not a big Wayans brothers guy.
Okay, Marlon Brando.
Just his dong.
Does have a sweet dong on him. No, I don't know. To me, Marlon Mack, I do buy into him, and I wouldn't mind him even if Luck were gone. He's just going to be a better play if Luck is on the field. But I think Mack is good, and I think he's young, and I like the upside. I like his ability to get better. And I think at the 30th spot, if that's his ADP, variant on that. I'd rather go there than Alex Collins, to be honest. I think Mack's going to have a better shot at the role and maybe a better team.
I hope I'm getting the name right. What about Allison Mack?
Is that a porn star?
I think she was the girl from Smallville that had the sex cult.
Oh, how about Alex Mack of Nickelodeon fame?
Ooh, the girl that turned into water?
I believe that was her. The Secret Life of Alex Mack, Secret World of Alex Mack?
Yeah, she got like nuclear waste dumped on her or something, and then she was able to like turn into a puddle and go under doors and shit.
You know, to be honest, I never watched this show.
She was hot.
I think wasn't she like 13?
Yeah, but so was I. I'm not saying that I wanted her as a 33-year-old man.
I think she had a renaissance recently where she was in a movie too.
Yeah, what's her name? Is she Larissa Olink? Yeah, she is. She was a dime back in the day. 10 Things I Hate About You, right? Come on. Just me? Shout out Heath Ledger.
Still Marlon Mack for me. So he's King Mack for me.
Oh, I'm on team Alex Mack, Larissa Olink. She's my ride or die. What does she look like nowadays? You can keep going.
Alex Mack's ADP is 50th, right? Jacksonville Jaguars expected starter Leonard Fournette, who has plus 850 odds to lead the league in rushing. The other relevant RB in the stable is TJ Yeldon. Fournette clocked only 3.9 yards per rush in 2017, which was actually a bit down from Jacksonville's 10th ranked 4.3 yards per rush average. But Fournette did see 8 men in the box more than any other primary running back besides Derrick Henry, which is an NFL next-gen stat. Pretty interesting to see to me. Fournette should improve in his second year, even though the odds of him having less defenders in the box is still pretty unlikely. He was pretty underrated as a catch receiver last year. He had a 75% catch rate, which would make him a pretty interesting option if they do involve him more on that side of things. TJ Yeldon's not going to take the job away, but to me it was worth noting if Fournette did miss time. Yeldon averaged 5.2 yards per rush and 7.5 yards per catch, which are about as good as anybody outside of Todd Gurley. And third stringer Corey Grant in his limited carries had 8.3 yards per rush. So there are guys there who can do stuff if Fournette did go out. I think that's worth noting, especially because Fournette is third in the league in touches per game, 23.4. I like Fournette a lot. I think the volume's going to be there. And I also like his backups a lot if he goes out at all. So I'm buying everybody, buying them all. Just, give me them Jags running backs.
Fournette, 8th running back coming off the board, 10th overall. He was solid. 11th in volume last year, 17th on a per play basis. I like that for a rookie. He's gonna, have a little bit more smarts, come into this a little bit different this year compared to last year. Was perfectly fine catching the ball out of the backfield. I think he consolidates the things that he's learned and takes a step forward. I'm buying Fournette.
All right, so we got a lot of buying. I like this positivity for more than just aging Nickelodeon starlets. Kansas City.
I'm still looking at our IMDb.
We're about halfway through now. I think we're making pretty decent time. So hey, good for us. Kansas City Chiefs. Expected starters, Kareem Hunt, who has plus 950 odds to lead the league in rushing. The other relevant running backs in the stable are Charkandrick West and Spencer Ware. Kareem Hunt comes with the 7th best odds to lead the league in rushing, which is a pretty good spot for him given that he has 2 other competent backs breathing down his neck. Hunt was amazing for parts of the 2017 campaign, and he's still overall, despite hitting a bit of I think he was a rookie last year, but I don't have that info in front of me.
He was.
Despite that, he had 4.9 yards per carry and 8.6 yards per catch, along with 3.3 receptions per game. And having the ball in his hands was really great for him. He scored touchdowns on 3.4% of his touches. He also received a very nice 69% of all rushes inside the 20-yard line. That's a big opportunity for him in what should be a high-octane vertical offense with Pat Mahomes at QB. Charkandrick West and Spencer Ware have been similarly effective, but it seems like Hunt's the unquestioned lead dog. So to me, variant on Kareem Hunt, buying him again. I had him last year, and it was an amazing ride having him. Love Kareem Hunt. It's buy.
This is a fucking NSYNC song?
Yeah. Did the buy dance.
Using my Lance Bass bobblehead. So Hunt, 7th running back coming off the board, 9th overall, just a spot ahead of Leonard Fournette. Hunt was great last year. 4th overall in volume, 6th on a per play basis for running backs. Love it. No reason not to. Solid in the backfield. Look, I'm nervous about having West and Ware behind him. If Hunt has 2 or 3 fumbles early or something, like I could see one of those guys snatching it. But I mean, this is probably the best backfield in football, or something, close to it. I love Hunt. I'm buying. Well, I'm holding because I'm not entirely sure that I would want him more than anybody that's ahead of him, outside of maybe Barkley.
So one thing for me to note, because you mentioned fumbles, Hunt touched the ball about 320 times last year. One fumble, just one fumble for Hunt. So a really sturdy guy who to me has some upside. He's got a big body too. He caught 84.1% of his balls. That's crazy to me. I love Hunt. Like I'm crazy about him this year. And I think if you're getting him at the bottom of the first round, you are doing a good job.
Yeah, look, like I said, I'm a fan. I would happily take him in the 7s or the 9 spot, like a spot before the wraparound or something like that. But I think that I would rather have the guys ahead of them, except for Barkley, just because, I'd rather have Kamara over Hunt because I'm a little nervous about Mahomes.
Okay, that's fair. I'm a Mahomes believer, but I think if you got to think about these things and sort of pieces of the same puzzle, and I think that's a fair approach to take. The Los Angeles Chargers expected starters Melvin Gordon, who currently has plus 2,500 odds to lead the league in rushing. The other relevant running backs are Austin Eckler and Justin Jackson. Melvin Gordon was pretty solid in 2017. Everything seems in line for him to do the same this year. He should be helped out a little bit by Mike Pouncey being added at center. But despite that, he was still 5th in yards from scrimmage last year amongst running backs. He's not terribly efficient, but the volume is there for him. Neither Eckler nor Justin Jackson is going to grade out as much more than a pass-catching back. So Gordon's the dude who's going to get the touches. He got 73% of all the carries inside the 20-yard line. So basically, he's getting every shot at scoring a touchdown. He's going to – and actually, he got 73% of the carries inside the 20, inside the 10, and inside the 5. So that was a pretty rare stat to find, a guy who's getting that many straight touches throughout all the parts of the red zone. I don't think he's super explosive. I think he's more of a volume play, sort of like McCoy is. But I think he's going to get the volume, and I think he's good enough with it. He's getting the volume in very profitable spots and a team who's going to be good. So I am going to, again, buy the opportunity for Melvin Gordon. I'm going to sell the talent.
Yeah, so they were really bad running the ball last year. 27th in rushing DVOA. Gordon was not great on an individual basis, whether that's running the ball or catching the ball out of the backfield. What you're talking about is volume, and that is a very different equation for fantasy success compared to necessarily team success. So he's going 9th right now, 11th overall. I think that's where he should be going because of how much he's going to be involved in the offense. I don't particularly like him as a good player, though. So if I'm doing anything, I'm selling him. I probably wouldn't draft him unless he started to tumble a little bit below that ADP.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing to note to me is that he is 6th in the league in terms of touches per game. Again, like we're talking about, like what do you weigh, value or the volume or talent? I think for fantasy purposes, you got to weigh volume pretty heavily if a guy's just replacement level or better. And I think Melvin Gordon's replacement level or better. I just don't think he's that great of a player. Like you put Alvin Kamara there and give him those touches, he's going to have like 5,000 yards. But I think you have Melvin Gordon there and he's going to do pretty well. But And that's enough, maybe, especially at that draft position to me.
Yeah, so like I'm starting from a volume perspective. I use like the barometer of how good they actually are as a metric of thinking like, how long is his leash? And I think Gordon has a relatively long leash, even though I don't think he was very good last year. So that's why I don't have a problem taking him in that range. I just don't like, he's underwhelming to me.
It's fair. Los Angeles Rams expected starter Todd Gurley, who currently has plus 600 odds to lead league in rushing. He just got the richest contract ever given to a running back. While they refuse to pay Aaron Donald, they just throw money at everybody else, including Brandon Cooks, who's been on the team for about 5 days. So that's fun. That must be fun for Aaron Donald. I'm sure he feels great about himself. But Todd Gurley was absolutely fantastic, and there's really no way to undersell this last year. As a guy who owned him in season long and played him a lot in DFS. And just looking at these stats, he was tremendous. He caught 4.3 balls per game, picked up 12.3 yards per catch. He was the only running back to run and catch for over 2,000 yards. The added pass game focus didn't affect his rushing averages either. He ran for 4.7 yards per attempt and got 279 carries, 6.1 yards per touch. If he's touching the ball and he's getting you 6.1 yards, that's insane. He's behind only Duke Johnson in terms of running backs who had a semi-regular role. So, I mean, you're talking about a guy who's a weapon specialist, and he's the only guy who compares to Todd Gurley. That's amazing to me. He was fourth in touches per game behind just Le'Veon Bell, Ezekiel Elliott, and Leonard Fournette. I think there's a little risk of, some more love going to Brandon Cooks, some more love going to probably a little less love going to Woods, maybe a little more love going to Cooper Kupp. But I think Gurley is amazing last year. His numbers, when I reviewed them, I was even unaware, even being so close to him. In terms of ownership and all that stuff, I had no clue he was that amazing last year. So I'm very on board with him again this year. Bye.
Number one running back on the board right now. Last year, second in volume, fourth in per play DVOA. He was second in receiving as a running back as well. I mean, if you're not buying Gurley, you started doing drugs that I don't believe in. I can't avoid it. Like, what else would you want?
Yeah, one thing I didn't point out, he scored a touchdown on 5.5% of his touches, and he had an insane amount of touches. I mean, it's just everything you look at for Gurley looks great. And if you think the Rams are an aggression team, which I think we've talked about enough, we don't think they are. At least I certainly don't, and I don't think you do either. I just don't see any reason that you would sell Gurley or even try fading him in any way.
I couldn't agree more. I wouldn't. I can't imagine wanting to go a different direction than Gurley.
Yep. So, yeah, unequivocal number one running back off the board for me right now, for sure. Yep. Miami Dolphins. Expected starter is now Frank Gore. The other relevant running back in the stable is Mr. Kenyon Drake, who has plus 8,000 odds to lead the league in rushing, while Frank Gore has none. The Dolphins added Frank Gore in the offseason. He goes into camp as the expected starter. It's hard for me to imagine Kenyon Drake not seizing enough of the role, especially with him being on Vegas's radar. Not that Frank Gore should be at this stage of the game anyway, but Drake being in the mix to me says that Vegas thinks that he's going to get the lion's share of carries anyway. Drake last year ran for 4.8 yards per rush, which is way ahead of his team's 3.9 yards per rush pace. And he also averaged 2 catches a game at about 7.5 yards per reception. Overall, his numbers were really great, despite only getting an average of 10 touches per game. I don't know. Like, Frank Gore was a terrible runner last year. He was still pretty good as a pass catcher, catching 76% of his balls thrown his way, rather. And he had 8.4 yards per reception. Miami was bad last year in rushing, 24th in the league. I don't know that they're going to get any better there. I don't love Gore cutting into Drake's share. I would like Drake if he had just a clear runway. But I think given the makeup, I'm going to have to sell both guys.
Dolphins were 31st in rushing DVOA last year. Putrid. Kenyon Drake, 18th running back off the board, 37th overall. Gore, nowhere near that. I'm absolutely selling Drake here. For me, there's no upside. There's no guarantee who gets the touches in that backfield, and I think Miami stinks. So very much a pass on Kenyon Drake. He is not in my feelings.
That's a good one to go out on. I'm with you on it. Miami, nothing there for me. I would like Drake. Maybe Frank Gore gets banged up in preseason and Drake gets the full role, and then maybe he's got some use. But I think people will remember his end of season performance more than they will think about Miami overall as a team. And that's a bit of a dangerous game to play when there are so many great guys out here. So
Frank Gore's not getting banged up in the preseason. That dude's going to play till he's 600.
Eventually, I feel like it's got to catch up. There's always a chance. And a new team, warm weather. Warm weather, not. I can't imagine that's great for his arthritis, whatever he's got going. Or maybe it is. Who knows?
Yeah, I'm sure a rainy day in Indianapolis was much better for him.
You know what? Fair point. Fair point. Maybe that's why he went to Miami. I don't know. But a lot of cold weather games coming for Mr. Frank Gore outside, too, for those AFC East teams. Minnesota Vikings. Expected starters, Dalvin Cook, who has plus 900 odds to lead the league in rushing. The other relevant running back there is Latavius Murray. There's been some turnover on offense with the loss of coordinator Pat Shurmur. Some offensive line change, as we've discussed before. New coordinator is former Eagles QB coach John DeFilippo. Obviously, also a new quarterback with Kirk Cousins. Dalvin Cook, though, coming in with the sixth best odds of winning the rushing title. After a rookie campaign where in 4 games he averaged 4.8 yards per rush and 8.2 yards per reception with a little under 3 catches per game. So everything looks great for him. He's coming off an ACL, though. Reports are that he's not wearing a knee brace right now, so that's probably good for him in terms of his recovery. But I don't know, man. He's young, and I think I like him, and I want him to do well. I'm a little worried about where he's. I don't know his ADP again, but I'm a little worried where he's going, and the fact he's coming off an ACL, and the odds seem really high to me for a guy coming off a catastrophic injury at running back. So I'm selling Dalvin, unfortunately.
What's your guess on his ADP right now?
6th, 7th.
Dalvin Cook, 10th running back off the board, 13th overall. He was fine in the limited sample last year. I think the Vikings offense got a little lucky last year. I also think they have a better quarterback now than they did last year. I'm having a hard time hashing that out. I'd be very nervous about the health of his knee. I don't think he's a guy that I would want to take as the 10th running back off the board. I would much rather have Christian McCaffrey and take my chances.
Yeah, I'd rather have the Marlon Max and the Alex Collinses than Dalvin, just because of the risk, and unless it gets to the point where he drops. But I don't know. I worry about an ACL. Like, an ACL is very serious for a running back. Like, I think we're sort of forgetting that ACL tears are bad because we've seen so many QBs come back from them, and we have Watson and Wentz coming back, and they're expected to be full health. A running back is different. A lot of cutting, a lot of movement that's going to need to occur, a lot of hits, a lot of low hits. It scares me, and I'd rather see him do it for somebody else than for me this year.
Do we even need to look at the next one?
So this is actually, to me, this is a really funny one the way I had to write it up. The New England Patriots expected starter is Rex Burkhead, who has NA odds, non-available odds to lead the league in rushing. The other relevant running backs, Jeremy Hill, Mike Gillislee, Sony Michel, and James White. So a lot of guys to consider here. The Patriots last year finally used Dion Lewis in a role that was in line with what you'd expect from a feature back, only to give him up in free agency to their former fixture, Mike Vrabel, and his new team in Tennessee. So we're back to just trying to guess what's going on in New England. The hope is that rookie Sony Michel somehow seizes the job, but more likely it's another committee approach. Burkhead was good, but a very non-traditional running back option. Picked up a touchdown, an outrageous 8.5% of the time he touched the ball, and 3 receptions per game. But he only ran for 264 yards. So you are just straight banking on touchdowns there. New signing Jeremy Hill was inefficient even by Bengals standards last year. He was actually worse than the team was rushing the ball. And they were, as we discussed before, they were very bad. So Mike Gillislee and Jeremy Hill, 2 guys who kind of suck and do the same thing. I can't imagine both of them making it out of camp, but whatever. James White caught 4 balls a game, which helped him to a sort of middling 600 yards from scrimmage, which makes him maybe viable in a PPR league or from a week-to-week DFS perspective, if you can guess. Sony Michel compares to Marlon Mack, according to his Spark score. So that I obviously love that. But I need to see it from him. I need to see him get the role. I'm just selling everybody here, and I'm not going to guess. This is all bullshit.
You ready for this?
Yeah.
Dion Lewis last year, number 1 in defensive, I don't know why I'm saying it like that. I probably said it like that a couple times too. In DR. So he had the best rushing season of any running back last year. He was number 2 in DVOA, so per play basis. This is not even factoring in his ability to catch the ball out of the backfield. That is strictly running the ball. He was the best in the league. I don't want to replace him with a rookie. I mean, that's. Are we serious here? Like Burkhead and White and stuff, they're fine catching the ball out of the backfield, but they are giving up a guy that was the second best running back on a per play basis last year. That's insane to me.
Yeah.
I'm not buying any of these clowns. They could just rotate these dudes. It could be the PlayStation week 1 and then Burkhead week 2 and then James White week 3. I'm not picking Patriots running backs. I'm good.
What's Michelle's ADP right now?
Where's the PlayStation at? 25th running back, 58th overall. Pass.
No, thank you. No, thank you for that. That's no. Don't trust the Patriots this year. You're right. It was really stupid to get rid of Deion Lewis, and we'll talk about him when we get to Tennessee. But yeah, that's all that stuff is right in line with what I think as well. There'll be guys who'll be good here week to week, but from a fantasy draft perspective, no thanks. And from a trying to bank on them in week 1 perspective, strong no thanks for me as well.
Lamar Miller, the first guy after the PlayStation. So yeah, I would much rather have Lamar Miller.
Yeah, I'm actually with you on that. That's the one thing that could make me go to Lamar Miller is the alternatives being Rex Burkhead and Sony Michel.
Yeah.
New Orleans Saints, expected starters Mark Ingram, who somewhat surprisingly has no odds to lead the league in rushing. The other relevant running back is Mr. Alvin. What was that?
He's suspended to start the season.
Oh, is he? I actually fucking forgot to note that. How many games is he out?
3?
4?
4? But that's why he's not going to lead the league in rushing.
Yep, you know what? My bad. I totally forgot about that one.
Yeah, 4.
It's too many guys.
I thought it was 3. I thought he got it brought down to 3, but yeah, it's 4.
All right, so Mark Ingram out for the first 4 weeks. I'll make sure to update the article for that one. But Alvin Kamara plus 4,500 odds to lead league in rushing. Despite I guess I got to update this whole thing. Despite Vegas's disrespect, Ingram was 6th in the league in yards from scrimmage last year. Also grabs 3.6 catches per game for 7.2 yards per catch. Great numbers. He also got 65% of the rushes inside the 5-yard line, while getting 45% of the rushes inside the 20, compared to 34% for Kamara. So Kamara is getting the far out red zone work. Ingram's still getting the goal line work. I think that's something worth noting. Both players roughly had the same amount of yards from scrimmage, with Kamara picking up 1554, Ingram picking up 1540. But Ingram had a ton more touches, 18 touches per game compared to 12.6 for Kamara. I would assume this gets closer to a 50-50 split. Obviously, it's even safer to assume possibly that Kamara is going to have more of the share just by the luxury of having 4 more games for not being a performance of a drug-abusing asshole like Mark Ingram apparently is. So, yeah, I'm buying Kamara. I guess I would have bought Ingram before we were reminded of the suspension, but I'm buying Kamara, selling Ingram.
I would still buy Ingram. I would have no problem bringing him in after the suspension. Kamara, 6th overall, 6th running back coming off the board. Last year, he was the 3rd best running back in terms of total output, and 1st overall on a per play basis running the ball. Not just that, numero uno in pass receiving as well. I couldn't be buying Kamara more. I'm 100% all in. I would take him ahead of Barkley. I would take him ahead of David Johnson. I would probably want to take him ahead of Ezekiel Elliott. I don't know if I could get to Bell or Gurley because I think both teams are really good, but I like the ability of I like the stability of Drew Brees. I see no reason why Kamara isn't better this year. Maybe not. Well, maybe better. I see no reason he's not the same thing he was last year.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I think there's been some talk about him being due for regression, but none of the stats back that out. He was just so good. It wasn't fluke stuff. It was all legit.
Yeah, big fan of Kamara. If Ingram's slipping, I mean, you don't give a shit. Look, if you think you're good, you don't care about the first 4 weeks. You care about, is Mark Ingram going to be available in the playoffs if I need him? That's really all you're looking for. So I'd have no problem going to Ingram, a guy that would be going much higher in a draft otherwise. I don't care too much about the opportunity cost. I'll figure out the first 4 weeks.
That's fair. I would worry just a little bit about Ingram not getting as many touches once they have. I mean, once you have 4 weeks driving a Ferrari, are you going to want to drive the Nissan Altima you have?
He's been there a while, man. I wouldn't worry too much about Ingram.
All right. And also, the Saints seem like a team would be like, oh, performance-enhancing drugs, you didn't support the team because you were blah, blah, blah. I don't know. Stuff like that, I always...
Their coach got suspended for an entire season. I'm sure they're fine.
He's learned, and now he's on the straight and narrow. I don't know. Just thought...
Nobody talks about that anymore, which is so crazy. They had a coach suspended for an entire season.
Yeah, then deservedly so, I think.
And he still has his job and like would probably get paid more to go somewhere else.
I wanted the Cowboys to get him. I still would like the Cowboys to get him if they ever move on from Jason Garrett. So
It's
I'm
insane,
fully
man.
there.
It's insane.
On to the New York Giants. Expected starter is Saquon Barkley, who has plus 1,000 odds to lead league in rushing. The other relevant running back in the stable, new signing Jonathan Stewart. New coach as well, Pat Shurmur, is going to try to bring the same offensive approach that he had in Minnesota last year. The one spot that they're hoping to have no questions with is with Barkley. Obviously, there are still some questions at quarterback, which we discussed last week with Mr. Eli Manning. Barkley's Spark profile compares best to David Johnson, another elite running back and receiving running back option. So I think that that's a great comp for him. And obviously, we've seen him be fantastic in college in so many different ways. I think that's a good spot. I mean, it's tough to project with New York because they were pretty mediocre last year, 22nd in the league rushing the ball with 3.9 yards per carry. One thing to note with Jonathan Stewart, he drew 8 men to the box defensively more than any other player in the NFL last year. So that I don't think helps Jonathan Stewart, but I do think it is something to note for when he gets carries and the help that might be provided to the other weapons offensively. Obviously, something we can talk about next week more. Barkley's the guy here, though. I want to buy him because I think he's going to get a lot of shots to do stuff, a lot of shots to get into space, but I feel like his ADP is so high and the hype on him is so high. I think you get cheaper guys who are going to provide you a comparable effort. So I would probably sell Mr. Barkley and Mr. Stewart.
Damn it, man. I was hoping to just tell you to suck it because I thought you were going to say buying Barkley. Yeah, I'm selling as well. Obviously incredibly talented, but I am not a believer in Eli Manning. I think this team still sucks. So I would not want, like, as I said, like I would much rather have Kamara. Feels so much safer. I'd rather have Hunt. I'd probably rather have Fournette. Like, I'm good. I'm going to sell Barkley. Not selling him as an individual, but I'm selling his situation.
Yeah, to me too, like I play my main season-long league that I've been playing for years is an auction league. And to me, like the idea of paying like what, $45 for Barkley or paying 20 for Marlon Mack, I'd rather save $25 and get Marlon Mack. And then also maybe get like, Alex Collins. Like, I don't know, like there's just a lot of reasons for me why you would fade Barkley in pretty much every format. Even though he is talented, I think there's enough reason for risk there and some concern. So yeah, I'm with you. I think we're both selling. Sad. Sorry, Mr. Barkley. The other team in New York, a much uglier situation. New York Jets, expected starters Isaiah Crowell currently has no odds to lead the league in rushing. The other relevant running backs are Bilal Powell and former Seahawk Thomas Rawls. Crowell comes from Cleveland with the expectation of being the lead dog, but the odds are it's going to be some sort of timeshare with Powell. And they do have hope for Rawls as well, given some of the flashes he showed in Seattle before. The Jets were a middling 20th in the NFL rushing the ball. Both Crowell and Powell's averages of 4.1 and 4.3 respectively were better than the Jets' 4.0 team average last year per rush. Powell has a reputation of being a better pass catcher, but he only catches balls 69.7% of the time. Crowell catches them 66.7% of the time, so really not that big of a difference. I think there may be some value from a DFS perspective, but from a fantasy season-long perspective, couldn't care less. Sell.
Pass. Crowell's coming off the board 38th as a running back, 92nd overall. The Jets are just absolute train wreck. I'm not taking Jets running backs. I'll be fine. I'll figure something out.
Yeah,
I don't have anything interesting to say. We're already running long, and the Jets aren't going to be the team that I'm going to give extra time to.
I'm with you on that. Oakland Raiders, expected starter is Marshawn Lynch, who has plus 10,000 odds to lead league in rushing. Other relevant running backs are Doug Martin, and I think Jalen Richard is worth noting from last year as well. He is a holdover. He'll be back. The Raiders obviously are bringing back Mr. John Gruden, who is coming in from the Monday Night Football booth, along with Rams QB coach of last year, Greg Olson, to head their offensive unit. Gruden claims they're going to bring the football back to the 90s, rely heavily on a run game. Lynch being on the MVP board would indicate that he's the one to watch here, despite the addition of Doug Martin. He pulled 4.3 yards per rush for Oakland last year. They were 13th ranked, averaging 4.2 yards per rush, so he was right in line, a little better with it. Doug Martin, though, I didn't realize, just terrible. And the amount of games that he played for Tampa Bay, 2.9 yards per rush, 3.3 yards per touch. He's a better player than that, I would think. But, I guess we'll find out this year. One thing, again, to bring up Jalen Richard, he was really, really good last year as a receiver, 9.5 yards per catch, 6.4 yards per touch overall. He has some upside. I don't know that he'll ever be a feature back caliber guy, but as a change of pace to two smash mouth runners, I do like him a little bit from that perspective. Uh, I want to buy somebody here just because of the approach to running and the chance at volume, but I think I am selling all of the Oakland Raiders cabal of running backs.
Dude, I couldn't sell this garbage fast enough. Lynch was atrocious last year on a per play basis. Doug Martin was atrocious last year on a per play basis. I'm not expecting John Gruden to come in here and just tear it up. I read a funny tweet earlier today, like, we have no idea what the Raiders are going to be able to do. Like, they're going to be this, or they might just run the Raiders playbook from 1999 in Madden, which I thought was really funny. No, I'm selling everything that I could possibly sell from a Marshawn Lynch, Doug Martin perspective. Lynch, 32nd running back off the board, 77th overall. I'm fine. I don't need it. I like the Raiders. I don't trust them at all, and I would just happily be wrong about taking one of those guys. Somebody else can have it.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. On to the Eagles. Expected starter is Mr. Jay Ajayi. I don't know. I'm calling everybody Mr. now. So everybody, expected starter is Jay Ajayi. He doesn't get a Mr. Plus 4,000 odds to lead the league in rushing. The other relevant running backs there are Corey Clement and the returning Darren Sproles, who was hurt last year. Everything in Vegas is reporting, and everything rather from reporters and Vegas is indicating that Carson Wentz should be back in full health. That's obviously a good sign for everybody. Their only big loss was the steady but unspectacular LeGarrette Blount. Jay Ajayi having any sort of chance here to win the rushing title. According to Vegas, he has about a 2.4% implied probability to win the rushing title. That works for me. Ajayi ran for a solid 4.2 yards per attempt between Philly and Miami. Also showed some upside in the passing game with 70.6% catch rate. Corey Clement was comparable in a smaller sample size, ran for 4.3 yards per, but didn't catch a ton of balls. Darren Sproles will obviously have the most of the ball reception part of the running back committee. To me, though, Ajayi is going to be the guy. He has the best shot at picking up a lot of Blunt's red zone carries and his overall carries. So I think I'm buying Ajayi. Yeah, I think I'm buying Ajayi. I think he's a little undervalued right now, and this team needs somebody who can run the ball. So I'm buying Ajayi.
Ajayi, 22nd running back off the board, 44th overall. He was just like a perfectly acceptable guy. So if the Eagles offense is clicking, he'll get touches and opportunities just by default. So I guess I'm holding Ajayi. One note for me, the next running back off the board on average is Mark Ingram. I would rather have Mark Ingram, and I would rather eat 4 weeks of shit and have Ingram later.
I would agree with that, actually. I forgot that hold was an option. I would actually have to switch my Ajayi to hold.
he's just there. He's sandwiched between Alex Collins and Mark Ingram. Perfect.
Yep, I agree. Pittsburgh Steelers expected starters Le'Veon Bell, who is currently holding out or maybe a risk to not sign his tender. I mean, he probably will, but just whatever. Vegas thinks obviously he's going to sign his tender, plus 550 odds to lead the league in rushing, which I believe has him at second in the overalls. The other relevant running back is James Conner, who was a much better runner than a pass receiver. The one change to note, they moved on from Todd Haley to their former QB coach, Randy Fichtner. The expectation is we're going to try to pass it even more because he is a bit more of an open air coach. He's run the spread offense before in college, and obviously he has had Ben's ear for a few years now. I think Le'Veon Bell worries me a little bit with the contract stuff, but Vegas thinks he has a 15.4% implied probability to win the rushing crown. So that's something. Bell wasn't great as a runner last year, and I think that's something we don't talk about enough. He averaged 4 yards per carry, and Pittsburgh finished 25th with 3.8 yards per rush last year. But he did get 27 touches per game, almost 6 catches per game. So from a fantasy perspective, not a lot to worry about, even if he doesn't rush that well. But I do think he was a little overrated as a rusher last year, and I would like to see him get back to what he was before that. But a lot of hurdles for Mr. Le'Veon Bell. He gets to Mr. I don't know. I think it might be a sell on Bell for me.
So I think he's good. I think he's one of the best running backs in football. He was good last year in most facets of the game. Number 2 running back on the board, number 2 overall. I would not take him anywhere near 2 until I knew that he signed his tender. There's a difference for me for like knowing Ingram's back in 4 games to Le'Veon Bell sitting out 8 weeks. I would want to know that he is going to be on the team before I took him second. Now, if I was like, if he started tumbling in some weird way, I would certainly pop him and hope for the best, but I am not buying him as the second guy off the board. I would if he signed tomorrow, no issue with it whatsoever.
Yeah, the opportunity is still enormous if he is in camp and he's there and he's ready to work. So yeah, I think that's right. Like I just the rushing part worries me a little. All these headaches with him kind of worry me a little. He seems unhappy. He's publicly grousing about Todd Gurley's contract, or at least making like eye emojis on Twitter about it. It worries me. It's just like a lot of toxic stuff in the air for him. And at that sort of, like you mentioned, at that sort of a high pick threshold, there's a lot safer guys you can get. And I'd rather, if I can get Todd Gurley instead in an auction, or if I can get even, maybe Zeke, I don't know. Like or I'd go cheaper. There are other ways to do this, and Bell worries me. So that hurts to sell him. San Francisco 49ers, expected starter, new signing, Jerick McKinnon, was plus 6,600 odds to lead the league in rushing. The other relevant running back is Matt Breida. McKinnon joins Jimmy Garoppolo in his rising MVP odds and his stable of MILF porn stars in San Francisco. His chances to lead the NFL in rushing seem pretty fair based on what we know about McKinnon. He's pretty versatile out of the backfield. He catches 75% of the passes thrown his way, about 3.2 catches per game last year, good for 8.3 yards per reception. His weakness has been a pretty obvious one. He's not that great rushing the ball. His size isn't fantastic. He picked up just 3.8 yards per carry behind the same offensive line that Dalvin Cook got 4.8 yards per carry behind. McKinnon's shifty. There's no one really behind him on the depth chart to scare him. Matt Breida, though, did put up 4.4 yards per carry in tandem with Carlos Hyde last year. It's actually better than Hyde. Breida, I don't think got a lot of respect overall, but looking at the stats, kind of shook out to me as a guy who I think there may be a little chance to get some usage this year. But still, McKinnon looks okay to me. I think it's going to depend on ADP. I'm going to hold McKinnon. I'm going to hold.
13th running back off the board, 24th overall. He was not great, in my opinion, last year. I'm definitely selling McKinnon, and I would be buying Breida. I'm a fan.
I'm surprised he's that high. I mean, I guess I'm not, because San Francisco's kind of a public team this year, but yeah, that 13, no. In the Alex Collins territory, yes. And 13, not so much for McKinnon for me.
McKinnon 1 spot ahead of Jordan Howard.
Oh no, Jordan Howard 1,000 times out of 1,000. I like McKinnon, but boy, that's silly.
3 spots ahead of LaShawn McCoy.
That's also silly. The volume,
man, people just giving tuggers to Jimmy Garoppolo. McKinnon gets to come along for the ride. I'd rather have Kate McKinnon.
She was very funny in The Spy Who Dumped Me, which I saw yesterday. That was my favorite Kate McKinnon work thus far. Though I did not see Lady Ghostbusters, so maybe I shouldn't fully judge. Seattle Seahawks. Anyway. Hey, so there's a special place in hell for women who don't support women. So
thanks, Carmen.
I guess. Seattle Seahawks expected starter is Rashad Penny, who has plus 10,000 odds to lead the league in rushing. The other relevant running backs: Chris Carson, C.J. Prosise, and J.D. McKissick. There's been a lot of talk, both in our previous chapters of this preview, about Rashad Penny. The media has also been piling on with support of Rashad Penny. He made the most tacklers miss in college, which I think is adding to his buzz out of all the guys in this class. Seattle's 20th last year in rushing offense. They averaged just 4 yards per play. Obviously, that can change a lot if Penny is as explosive as advertised. Rashad Penny, a lot of people compare him to Alvin Kamara. I don't think that's actually his comparison in terms of a spark profile, but Penny does seem to offer some upside. The guys behind him aren't that great. Chris Carson was just sort of a body. J.D. McKissick was okay rushing it, better receiving it. C.J. Prosise is very explosive, but gets hurt all the time. So Penny's going to get his shot. I need to know his ADP too. I feel like he's getting a little too much hype in the stuff that I follow. So I'm going to hold Penny as well.
Penny, 20th overall at running back, 42nd guy off the board. It's Seattle's bad running the ball last year, so you really have to be a believer in Penny. I'm not generally a believer in just like running backs being able to change an offense. So I would sell Penny at that spot. I don't get the sense that they'll be like too worried. They're going to go with whatever they can to make it work. So if Penny struggles, I assume his leash is relatively short in Seattle. I can't see I can't see Pete Carroll putting up with too much shit. So if it goes well, that he'll be off to a great start. If it doesn't, I could see him riding Pine. I'll pass on Penny.
Also, one thing to note about the Kamara comparison, which comes up a lot. If you just Google Penny Kamara, you'll see a ton of articles. His Spark profile comparison was Melvin Gordon, who we discussed is not explosive, not really a guy who does much more than get a ton of volume. So, hey, if Penny's going to get a ton of volume and he becomes Melvin Gordon, then he's a great value. If he doesn't get that volume and they're expecting him to break plays, then I think you're in for some serious trouble. So I'm still a hold, but not a super optimistic one right now.
There you
go. Let's see where'd that go? Boom. We got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We're at the finish line almost. They are expected to start Ronald Jones, who currently has plus 10,000 odds to lead the league in rushing. The other relevant running backs are Jaquiz Rogers, Charles Sims, and Peyton Barber. I love Ronald Jones as a player. He was a USC guy. He was fantastic for us for 3 years. One thing to note, though, Tampa Bay will be without Jameis Winston for the first 3 weeks. So there is a chance that whoever is at running back gets relied on a little bit more. It should be a good shot for Ronald Jones to break out if that is him. His Spark comparison is Ronnie Hillman, the former Bronco who flamed out of the league, I believe. Not a great comparison to have, but Jones was much better than that, I think, in college. He had 261 carries for 1,550 yards last year before going pro. Jones should be able to take the job, I think. But I do think it's worth noting Peyton Barber was actually pretty good last year. He was a better rusher and receiver than Rodgers, and actually he had a better catch rate than Charles Sims. So I would watch Barber closely in the preseason because I think there is a chance that Barber wins that job and Jones is kind of the secondary back. But if Jones wins the job, I do like Jones. So is a watch, but I'm ready to buy whoever comes out of that backfield.
Tampa 25th in rushing last year. Jones 24th running back off the board, 57 overall. I am not a believer in Tampa Bay, particularly if Jameis Winston is not going to be on the field for a couple games. I don't have any real interest in grabbing him at that spot. He's 2 ranking spots ahead of Lamar Miller. I would much rather have Lamar Miller. Ronald Jones is more of a flyer for me. I think he's going a little bit too early. And because I don't like Tampa, I'm going to sell Ronald Jones.
I agree that Jones is going a little too high, especially with looking more at Barber. Barber was pretty good last year, so I think there is a chance that he can hold off Jones or at least make it uncomfortable for him. So I'm with you on it. I do think I'm a little more optimistic, though. I was surprised Tampa was so bad this year because they were so great with vertical passing. You would think that would translate to being able to run the ball better, but they did not. They did not at all. So, yeah, we'll see. He's on the tier as the other guys that we've talked about. He's not in that Alex Collins kind of Marlon Mack upside tier for me. Tennessee Titans, expected starters Derrick Henry, plus 4,000 odds to lead the league in rushing. The other relevant running back, the guy we talked about before, Dion Lewis. The new offensive coordinator, Matt LaFleur from the Rams, might end up being a big asset to Derrick Henry's career. If he were to get anything like a Todd Gurley role in the offense, obviously the touches won't be there in the same volume, but using him more creatively would be good. Henry scored a touchdown 3.2% of the time he touched the ball, and that's despite seeing 8 defenders in the box 50% of the time he was on the field in 2017, which was 4th most in the league. To me, getting him into space would be a great asset. He's a strong player. He's a bruiser. He averaged 4.2 yards per carry compared to 3.6 for DeMarco Murray, who's now retired. Dion Lewis, on the other hand, fantastic. He's far more explosive than Murray was. So that's a pretty big get for them. Picked up 5 yards per carry and 6.7 yards per reception. So he misses tackles. Dion Lewis is amazing last year. I still think Henry's going to have a lot of value. I worry a little bit about Lewis cutting into it the same way that Murray did, but I think they're going to use them both creatively. I am buying both guys.
Henry, 17th running back off the board, 35th overall. Dion Lewis, 27th running back off the board, 64th overall. I'm not a big Derrick Henry guy. I think that his ability is a little bit overstated coming into the year. However, I like both of these guys at the spot they're being drafted. I would happily get them both, handcuff them together, hope for the best. I'm a really big believer in Dion Lewis. And if Henry is going to be going 17th, and I can get him as my 3rd pick in the middle of the 3rd round, I'm totally cool with that. I think that's good value. So I'm buying both of these guys.
Yeah. Hey, We're a lot of more agreeing on the running backs than I would have expected.
Fucking sucks, man.
Not good for our ESPN talking head show opportunities. We gotta yell at each other and be like, no, and call you a racist more.
I was gonna say also the problem lies in the fact that we are both white men. We need an African American person and probably a woman to host this, then we can be on ESPN.
Maybe we get one of the Asian hitters who I like so much. We got G-Man Choi is not doing much.
There you go.
Last team on the board, the Washington Redskins, the Chubster's own personal favorite squad. The expected starter is Darius Geis, who currently has plus 4,500 odds to lead league in rushing. The other relevant running backs are Rob Kelly, Chris Thompson, and Samaje Perine, who had a little hype last year and didn't live up to it. Washington was the 30th ranked rushing attack in 2017, picking up 3.6 yards per carry with a backfield of Kelly, Thompson, and Perine. Kelly was the worst effective, or least effective out of them, and the worst, just 3.1 yards per tote. Perine wasn't far ahead with 3.4. Meanwhile, Thompson was pretty great. He had 4.6 yards per carry. He also had a pretty crazy 13.1 yards per reception with almost 4 catches a game. So that's a lot of air yards that he's getting. His slight build and injury history mean that he couldn't possibly be a feature back. But Geis comes in being compared to Ezekiel Elliott in terms of the spark profile. That is a man who is built to tote the rock. If he takes carries away from Kelly and from Perine, there's about 24 touches that are available for him. I think him getting 20 touches is not a crazy thing, probably maybe closer to 15 to 20. But Geis actually, I think, is a pretty interesting play. And he's a guy who's shown in college, running for LSU in the SEC. He can handle the damage that comes with the role, too. His explosiveness is the big question for me, but I like the opportunity in front of him a lot. So I'm going to buy Mr. Geis.
I just got a really crappy text message. All right, let me get my R. Kelly joke out of the way. Big R. Kelly fan. Geis, 19th running back overall, 41st off the entire board. I'm a huge Geis fan coming into the season. I like that his spark comparison is Ezekiel Elliott. I would happily buy Geis, and this is not because of the Redskins. This is not a homer pick for me. I'm generally more anti my favorite team than pro them, but I think Geis has a chance to be a really good running back.
Yeah, I think he might be my favorite rookie on the board this year. So, yeah, that's it. That is our last team. So thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. Make sure to read the article companion that comes along with this. It's linked in the description below. And we will see you guys next week with Chapter 4, in which we'll talk about the wide world of wide receivers. So see you guys then.
Adios, everybody.